If somebody makes a survey as of who is the most famous prophet, probably most of the so-called educated people on this planet would say Nostradamus. And that's because of the mass media, especially because of the documentaries aired by the biggest channels. Nostradamus is their favorite because his verses are quite vague and can be twisted easily in almost any direction. And so the mass media does interpret them in ways to serve its agenda, which is to artificially boost the feeling of hopelessness and the expectations of a dark future for the human race. In this manner, the sheeple would be expected to swallow up easier the dark future that is being prepared for them. And they will even take an active part in creating this dark future, naively believing that this is the natural flow, that this is the most likely option, and that gets a subtle confirmation by another fraudulent idea implanted in people's minds, again by the mass media, and that is the very dangerous belief that all this pollution, war, and other nonsense are a natural byproduct of the progress and the emancipation of the human society. In reality, they are neither natural because they are artificially implanted by the authorities, nor they are byproducts. In reality, they are just tools used during the controlled demolition of the human society that is going on at the moment. And deliberately confusing people about the very meaning of what is a prophet actually plays a major role in this, because prophets have been always the leaders of society. That is why people are not being informed that even in our modern times there are people who can make amazingly, stunningly accurate predictions, along with performing biblical-style miracles. Instead of informing people about the existence of such prophets even nowadays so that they can benefit of their teachings that aim at real peace and prosperity, the mass media has only stained the true meaning of the word prophet and is now gradually substituting it with the idea of some abstract vague verses of Nostradamus. And it seems to work pretty well. People don't even care to hear the messages of the personifications in human flesh of that divine fabric of creation, of which they are made themselves and to which many of them even go to pray to church. The human race has not only turned its back to its own engineers, the celestial beings who created us, we have even reached the point of almost forgetting them. But our creators and guardians have not abandoned us. This episode is about their messengers and about the new golden age that is about to start very soon. The miracles of these messengers are a proof that they are genuine, and the full concept of the new golden age coming very soon is not yet another fabrication of the parasitic forces that is meant to keep us silent while we are being slaughtered. First of all, I want to tell you about Bruno Gröning. He was a simple man without higher education. By trade, he was a carpenter and did other types of manual labor. Carpenter. I wonder why that sounds familiar. Bruno was mystic and a healer. Seriously disabled people were coming on wheelchairs. After seeing him and listening to him, they would be immediately able to walk and even push their own wheelchairs. Others were in such a serious condition that they were brought on stretchers by their relatives. All they did was listen to him, take his instructions to heart, and they were also cured instantaneously. I do encourage you to see the videos, the links to which are in the description. Many of the people who got miraculously healed are still alive to tell the story. Many others were studied by the medical professionals at that time. I wonder where was the church at that time? Was it too busy not to hear about him, to not canonize him as a saint, to not recognize him? It must have been taking a nap, and it seems it's not out of its slumber yet, because entire nations, the population of which considers themselves to be Christians, organize bloody and cruel wars, Sadly, the Church doesn't find time to remind them that this is fundamentally non-Christian. The government of Germany at that time ordered the mass media to lie about Bruno Gröning. In the documentaries, you can see a journalist of that time testifying in front of the camera about it. But it didn't work. People were arriving by trains, by foot, by any type of vehicle. They didn't know the address, they only knew the name of the village, and they would hear from him and get healed. But the government did not like the idea of the people of its country being healed. That is why they instigated a number of legal cases against Bruno on the grounds that he is healing people without having medical education. Their devious schemes succeeded, and he was no longer allowed to heal at the end. And because he took birth on this earth in a human body only for the sake of others, when he saw that the humanity in general is not yet ready to accept his message, he felt that he has got no more business here and left this earth at a relatively early age. He also had the powers to see the past and the future, and he told us that a new age is coming very soon, an age when everybody will have the powers to heal like him. I believe him. His word of honor is worth more for me than the words of all the millions of quackademics that assure me that they have dissected the universe and have definitely figured out everything already.
There's a feeling inside, so deep and so wide, so open and free. When love is revealed, all beings are healed, so naturally. When you let go of fear, the truth will appear.
And now a bit in terms of a more precise timing of the events that will bring about this new peaceful era of development of our society. To the best of my knowledge, the most reliable source so far in terms of the timing of these events is the relatively less well-known prophet from Bulgaria, and that is Slava Sevrukowa. She is quite remarkable because she has a lot of predictions that have come true. For example, the unification of Germany made decades before it actually happened, or the fall of communism, the appearance of the European Union, again, that was predicted many decades before even the idea should have been conceived, and many other events of the local politics. The predictions were made in a clear language that doesn't allow 1,000 interpretations, which is the case with many other prophets. And in addition, they were recorded and published in books. There is a good amount of books devoted to Slava Sevrukowa. So they are most definitely genuine and not some questionable article that was written after the events occurred. You can make yourself familiar with further details about those predictions in the link provided in the description. And actually, Slava Sevrukowa is quite an amazing person. She's been awarded honorary titles by a number of internationally famous universities for her works in physics. She did not have any formal education of physics, but she was approached by scientists. They directed her to what kind of particles she should examine, because at that time the microscopes were not developed enough to see them so close, and she gave very accurate descriptions of those particles. She zoomed in with her astral vision and saw these particles of which the matter consists. Later on, when microscopes did evolve enough, her observations were confirmed. Now let's get on to the interesting part, the transition towards the New Age. According to her, the turbulent times of the transition will start in the end of the 20th century. I'm using future tense because that was said decades ago. The dawn of the actual New Age, according to her words, would be around the year 2050, and the beginning of the New Age would be after year 2075 or around the year 2100. Before that, there will be a difficult period with intensified natural disasters and plenty of wars. There will be a couple of periods of more intensive calamity, but she mentions only the period between year 2025 and year 2032. And if you wish to get a further assurance of the accuracy of her predictions, you can look for future events which will happen before year 2025, and this is a minor and a very local event, local for Bulgaria because that's where she hails from. She predicted that part of the territories of the country will be taken over by purely peaceful means, without a single gunshot, she said, by Turkey. Now, this was really unthinkable so many decades ago when she said that, but the current political situation definitely shows something like this brewing. And if you see it in the news within the next, 8-9 years, please remember this video and be sure that the rest of her prophecies will come true. Now, a bit more specific information in terms of regions. Europe. Due to natural calamities, large parts of the continent will be submerged underwater. Those who live in the highlands will survive. Exact timing was not given, but the general impression is that it will happen before year 2075. She also foresaw the terrible economic crisis in Europe. Well, it's gonna get terrible in the future. The worst of it would be after year 2025. At that time, the general population will be still not aware what is the real cause of all this economic crisis. Many of them will be starving and still will not understand why. But the few small details that she gives about the floodings make them look, at least to me, not as severe as the ones shown on the Edgar Cayce flooding map of the future, which does not mean that the Edgar Cayce map has no credibility. Maybe he has taken the snapshot of the Earth at the time when the waters were at their highest level, and later on maybe they could subside. And next is America. Slava Sevrukowa said that many talented and special souls will be born there, but also unfortunately the Empire of the Evil will make its capital over there as well. Unfortunately, it will share the sad fate of Europe, and its territory will be drastically reshaped by tectonic movements and floods. The changes that will these tectonic plates movements bring to the geographical map of the world will be considerable. Entire nations will go missing. And whoever survives these natural calamities will be most likely killed in the wars that will follow them. Those wars will come to write some of the most shameful pages of the history of humanity. And so by the end of the 21st century, there will be very few humans left alive. But those who survive will eventually understand the uselessness and stupidity of all wars, and from them, the next, highly evolved human race will emerge. Technology will continue evolving in a miraculous way. Very soon, Slava Sevrukowa says, the highways, I see them overgrown with bushes, because people will have their private flying vehicles in the not so far away future. But that will be very short-lived, because as science advances, it will turn to what I call in my documentary series the science of the survivors, or what is commonly known to people nowadays as magic. Actually, magic and technology are the very same thing. Just the higher levels of technologies have been labeled as magic by the parasites so that they can declare them as non-existing, then make people believe it with the help of their most powerful weapon, the mass media, and so the access of the Earth residents has been cut off, and currently they cannot take advantage of the amazing technological achievements of the survivors. And then Slava Sevrukowa describes in detail what kinds of technology will come after that. She says people will not need technical devices and cell phones anymore to talk to somebody on the other side of the planet, because they will use telepathy. Gradually, they will abandon also their TV sets, because with their astral vision, they will be able to see much more and much clearer. She says in a couple of centuries, everybody will be able to see like me. This is why there were highly advanced technological civilizations in the past, but we don't find that many remains as we expect, because we don't understand what kind of technology exactly did they use. In future, we will adopt the advanced ways of the past as we rediscover them and remember them again. As the new age begins and people start living in a natural way in their natural environment, their lifespan will become longer, reaching up to 170 years, and even that in the not so far away future, meaning in the beginning of the new age. Now, interestingly enough, the year that Slava Sevrukowa gives more or less as a start of the new age is 2075, and that is exactly the year given by the Seth personality channeled by Jane Roberts. The channeling is found in her books, Seth Speaks, Nature of Personal Reality, and a dozen of others. And this is the only channeled material for which I think we have a serious confirmation and reasons to believe that it is absolutely genuine. One of the reasons for which I consider them to be genuine are the details given by Seth regarding the afterlife. These details were confirmed very well years after they were published, and it happened because the past life regression techniques evolved. And these details about the afterlife and the details of the existence on the astral plane were not confirmed by a couple of people who have read New Age books and maybe even the books of Jane Roberts, but by hundreds of thousands of people who have undergone past regression and have been telling about the other planes of existence. Many of these people, actually most of them, are simply patients who need help sorting out their internal world. They don't necessarily believe in astral existence or have any interest in it or have read any materials, New Age publications on it. And combine all this with the fact that Jane Roberts and her books are not extremely famous. Okay, they are translated, they are international, but she's not an author that everybody has heard about or an author that everybody has read. So there is absolutely no chance that those small details have been known, what to speak of being believed, by those thousands of people who confirmed them during their past life regression sessions. And this is only one of the reasons. There are more for which I think the Seth channeled material has to be taken very seriously, of course, by those who are interested about finding the truth about their real self. So Seth clearly says, by year 2075, the transition towards the new age, the new peaceful society will be completed. And then in one of the less famous books of the Seth series called The Education of Oversoul 7, Seth gives curious details about one of the possible timelines which the humanity will follow during this transition. This timeline unfolds like this. By the end of 21st century, the glorious human race manages to completely trash the planet with pollution and nuclear skirmishes. And after the people understand that they can no longer even breathe here, they take to the skies and they build floating cities in Earth's orbit. And this book, The Education of Oversoul 7, contains the fascinating account of a young boy that escapes the floating city because he has a dream to start new type of society on Earth that will respect the planet and will live in a natural way. Upon arrival on Earth, he meets people who have been already attempting to do this for some time. And those people have been deciphering information from all the ruins that have manifested on Earth after the New Age started. We'll return to this point later on when we review Mother Shipton's prophecies. Now I just want to finish off with the floating city topic, and the Seth materials are not the only source of it. There is one other published book by a psychiatrist, I believe, who got hold of a very interesting hypnosis subject who traveled to the future and was one of the residents of these floating cities. The information about the floating cities in both books absolutely matches. And to translate it into survivors' terms, the parasites, they gathered together and they built the floating cities and completely established their rule there. By that time, they have managed to demolish, under the excuse of nuclear skirmishes, all the major Roman and Greek effigies and almost any historic ruin that they could get their hands on. Only pictures of them were left for the future generations. They managed to destroy all artifacts and pieces of evidence of the old history. They proclaimed their new history as something indisputable, and the life philosophy of these people living in the floating cities is absolutely materialistic and devoid of any connection with their spirit. For example, when a person from the floating cities was questioned by this hypnotist, he was asked, "What is your religion?" And he said, What is your what? Oh, he said, I remember, yeah, we studied this in history. There were religions and spirituality and other nonsense in those old times. Yes, there was a mention about it. In reality, the scientists, even mainstream one, are discovering and will continue to discover a lot about astral life, near-death experiences, telepathy, psychic powers, reincarnation, and they will learn a lot by the end of this century. But when the parasites isolate the people on the floating city, they will simply lie that no, this never happened, there wasn't anything like that, there were some just only old superstitions. While on the other hand, the freedom communities, and that will remain on Earth, will start learning from nature and from old knowledge that will become accessible to them in a special way to facilitate their learning. So in terms of the future of your individual soul, if you are very much inclined and all these technological gadgets are the most important thing for you in the existence, you will have the opportunity to continue getting reborn in such an environment in the floating city communities. Over there, life will be peaceful and maybe even quite nice according to some people's standards. There will be no more wars because there will be no need of staging such. The parasitic takeover will be complete. But if your inner self is more interested in exploring the mysteries of consciousness, then you will get the opportunity to be reborn on planet Earth and get advantage of technological developments that are far superior than the technical one we currently know of. But your preference will be only one of the determining factors. Another very important one is the set of beliefs that you have cultivating during your numerous reincarnations. Let's put it in simple words with a very easy example. If somehow or other you maintain the belief that war is under any circumstances an option for human behavior, this belief of yours may make you unsuitable candidate for reincarnation for that future society on our planet, because people at that time will not be interested in these types of behavior models. And when they plan their future children, when they put the energy of the individual soul that they are calling as their child, they will be calling for different types of soul, and you will not get a chance. The same will apply for all types of beliefs that harming others or harming the nature around can have some sort of excuse. And if you still believe that you are actually a very good person, but others around you are bad and are provoking you to respond with violence, insults, or anything else of that sort, all I can say to you is that the fact is that you do not understand the law of karma will not make you unsusceptible to it. Again, if you believe that if in future you are born in a paradise-like environment, you will of course be a very good person because there will be no problems provoking you, I would like to tell you that you are absolutely wrong. You are absolutely wrong. Reality is different. You don't need to wait a few hundred years to exist in a more subtle astral environment, or what usually people call existing in higher dimensions. Many people get temporary access to it even now by using magic mushrooms, Marita muscari, ayahuasca, and many other vehicles that get them there. Some of them get tossed into so-called bad trips. These are extremely unpleasant experiences that happen even to people with very positive outlooks. The reason for which they get dragged into these horrible experiences is the presence of a karmic seed of such experience buried deep in their psyche, or karmakshaya, depository of their karma, which can be translated also as a set of beliefs. As the soul starts functioning in higher dimensions of existence, such karmic seeds get manifested much more quickly. That environment is very similar to what everybody has experienced during their sleep time in their dreams. Everything changes very fast. You fly quickly from here and there. You end up in different situations without being physically transported from one location to another. What most people experience in dreams is very similar to living in higher dimensions, but there is a big difference. Most of us do not have control over the environment, over the happenings, the events in the dreams, while people who get born with a proper body in a higher dimensions environment, he knows how to control the environment around, and this environment reflects his karmic seeds in a flash compared to us, because we plant a seed now and we eat its fruits in few lifetimes. We live in such a dense environment currently that it happens very slow, while in the higher dimensions it happens very quickly. So people who still have in their karmic shaya a lot of seeds of darkness will find it very frustrating and unpleasant that the higher dimensions are not for them. And that is why the arrangement of karmic reincarnations works like this. First of all, one learns the basic lessons of karma in a more dense environment, in the same way as you learn car driving initially on a very low speed. And once you master the basics, you can drive sports cars as well. And the removal of negative karmic seeds does not take place when a hairy, smelly devil boils you alive in a pot of oil. It happens when you sit and give yourself time to think. There is a much more sensible way to do it. You can read more about it in the books of Jane Roberts and also the compilations of Dr. Michael Newton and Dr. Brian Weiss. And back to the floating cities, below in the description there is a link to a free PDF file with the book, but I would advise you reading it only after reading at least a couple of other books of Seth, Jane Roberts. Otherwise, you will find it absolutely confusing. Probably you won't understand anything at all, and you will wonder why you're wasting your time with this book. And it might be worth using online translator and having a look at the website about Slava Sevrukowa. There are small curious things over there. For example, about the first Russian astronaut, Yuri Gagarin. She says that actually he was not the first one, he was the 10th. The first 9 attempts were unsuccessful. She doesn't give details, but I get the general impressions that simply the spacecrafts exploded in space. And then the spaceship of Yuri Gagarin was actually launched a few days before the officially announced date. They wanted to get sure that it all happened really, and he didn't die over there like the first few. And after they saw it's going on okay, then they announced it to the public. Although Slava Sevrukowa did get some recognition while she was alive, she never got really famous. Maybe one of the reasons is that at the very same time, again in Bulgaria, Baba Vanga, whom I call the most extraordinary shaman of our modern times, was accepting and helping people by thousands. Now, what do I mean by the greatest shaman of modern times? It's entirely possible that extraordinary individuals are taking birth amongst the unknown tribes in the Peruvian and Brazilian, Ecuadorian jungle, Siberia, Southeast Asia, but we simply don't know about them. So, Vangelia Gushturova, that is her official name, was born in a family of simple peasants. As a child, a powerful storm lifted her off the ground, tossed her away, injuring her badly. That is how she permanently lost her eyesight. Although her eyes remained permanently sealed off till the very end of her days, still she was able to do the household chores because she was seeing around with her astral vision. For example, one of these thousands of people who came to her for healing remembers the following episode. She advised him to take a certain herb for his illness, and then she asked some relative or a friend of her to go in the backyard and pick up some of it. As she continued talking with the man seeking help, all of a sudden she spoke very loudly to the lady who was on the backside of the house. Don't pick up those leaves because they grow in the sun. This herb helps when its leaves grow in the shadow. This is how well she used to see. She lived a long life and spent each and every single day of it helping the thousands of people that were sieging her house, waiting for months to see her with all kinds of unsolvable problems. As the people would come in and sit down, she wouldn't ask them why they have come. Immediately, she would start telling the stories out of their lives, which in their turn led to the problems because of which these people came here. The accuracy with which she could see things was quite amazing. She lived through the war, and at that time, the women whose husbands were fighting would come to her all the time and ask her, is he alive? Is he coming back? And very often, Vanga would tell them even the very date on which the husband would come back. Actually, a team of scientists spent some time with her in her room, and although, of course, their conclusion was that there is no scientific calculation explanation of all this. Still, they calculated as much as they could, and the result was that 70% of everything that she sees is correct. Her accuracy could be rated something like that of Edgar Cayce. Definitely he saw too many things to make it clear beyond any doubt that he had special abilities, and yet some of his visions did not come true. It is not by chance that another observation, another statistic made as of the accuracy of the historic events as they are seen by people under past life regression is also 70%. Well, apparently 30% do tend to get lost in the translation when information is transmitted from one plane to another. But yet not always, because Slava Sevrukowa seems to get it right all the time. But in the case of Vanga, I think it's more of a language problem in terms that she hasn't seen much of our world to understand it so well, to the point that she can transmit everything in a fashion the way we understand it. She was always blind, not much education, she hasn't been anywhere much around at all. She frankly told people, you have absolutely no clue in which world I actually live and what I see. And by the way, her general opinion about our understanding of what history has been is as follows. People nowadays don't have the slightest clue of what the history of their planet was actually. But then she continued, times will change. People will unearth amazing golden cities, and then they will become aware of who they are and why do they get born here. Vanga was quite famous. For example, even the presidents of many countries would come to her humble hut. My favorite is the meeting with Leonid Brezhnev. He came and he sat on the simple table where she was accepting guests. And since he saw a blind woman in front of him, first he wanted to make sure that she knows who is he. So he sat and asked, do you know who am I? And she said, yes, I know who are you. Do you know who am I? Hitler also paid a visit to Vanga himself, but she chased him and his people from far away. As the group of men were approaching her house, she turned them off by shouting, don't come here and tell your boss that he will not conquer the world. Countless reports show that she was not extremely favorable to people with dark intentions, and she would tend to chase them away even before they enter her hut. Now, in terms of actual predictions about the future of the planet, many times she spoke, it is also recorded on video, that the great peace is coming. That's how she called the new era. That was also her very last message before she died. Don't you worry, all of you, the great peace is coming soon, very soon. Well, some people were complaining about the situation in general, and they were asking, when is this peace coming? We are tired of waiting. Her reply was, "You are too much in a hurry. You are not gonna see this with your eyes. It's your children who will see it. Syria has not yet fallen." She definitely spoke about the cruel war that will sweep through the Middle East. At least half a century ago, she said that Syria will be in the middle of this conflict. And after Syria falls, according to her, whatever that means, then an apocalyptic chain of events could be expected. She also mentioned that the people who will live through this war in the world will not even understand who is fighting who. I find this to be an absolutely correct observation, and if you are under the impression that these are some local Muslim terrorists over there, I would strongly suggest that you consider other source of getting your news. Now, if you use the search engines to look for Vanga's prophecies, most likely something like this will appear in your screen. This timeline started appearing in the media while Vanga was still alive. It emerged after a Russian journalist visited her and after that published this in a Russian newspaper. Now, there are Bulgarians who are actually trying to study Vanga because she said so many things to all these thousands of people who visited her daily, and all of it, almost none of it was recorded even in audio, what to speak of video, so her prophecies mainly remained scattered, so to say. They were not systematically available. So these people, the Vanga specialists, all of them say that probably she did not say this and the journalist made it up. Because, first of all, she never told any of these things to anybody else. I mean, to the people who were close to her and her friends, she always talked about the new golden age coming very soon, and not about these things that appeared in the newspaper. And also, the other very important reason for which these are not considered genuine Vanga prophecies is the fact that it's impossible to go to just sit next to her for half an hour and get this information out of her. She doesn't present the timeline in this linear fashion that we would like to hear it. Yet on the other hand, in this set of predictions, we see the element of the Muslims invading Europe. Now, this was printed quite a few decades ago. At that time, it would be sheer madness to suggest anything like that. While in the last few months especially, we see that it can turn into a reality very quickly because European governments are welcoming and importing military from the Middle East. I mean, this is a piece of information from the mainstream media, along with the genuine refugees who are indeed simple people running from the war that is ravaging their countries. They are people in uniforms belonging to what is usually labeled as dangerous terrorist groups. And not only that, but even the mainstream media doesn't hide that some of the so-called refugees are actually people with false passports. The European Union does not have any strict checkup are the passports genuine. They openly admit that there are thousands of people with false passports and yet they daily continue accepting them. So at this point, when the European governments are openly, without even hiding, creating suitable conditions for a Muslim takeover of Europe, I don't see any problem for the Nostradamus predictions that the Pope is running from Rome, fleeing from the Muslims to take place. But the point is, how did the journalist know about it a few decades ago? Well, either she just borrowed it from Nostradamus when she was making up her story for the newspaper, or alternatively, she might have gotten few seeds of truth from Vanga and later on concocted the full story around them. And because Vanga is famous, I recently noticed disturbing articles circulating in famous English websites where the earlier Russian article was taken, scrambled, ears changed, stories twisted, and a new prediction cooked up and published as Prophecies of Vanga. In reality, what her friends and relatives certainly heard from her again and again was a timeline very similar to the one of Slava Sevrukowa. But Vanga is my favorite because she is such a powerful teacher. For example, this is how she describes the most difficult years of apocalyptic events. Some people will be running abroad with their last money, hoping to escape. Others will even resort to digging holes in the ground just to remain alive. But all of this will be in vain. Only those with pure hearts and intentions will survive. Because the era of the big peace belongs to the pure-hearted, the others will be denied access. She was asked about how the life will feel like in this era of great peace. She replied that nobody will go to work as we do, nobody will poison or dig Mother Earth to extract things from her. Everybody will be content because things will grow naturally around and everything will be clean and pure. And then people asked her, but what are they gonna do all day if they're not going to work? She replied that mainly they will take great care that the children grow up pure-hearted. Her description of how the humans will progress at later stages is also quite similar to the one given by Slava Sevrukowa, developing of amazing psychic powers that for the most people nowadays would look simply miraculously impossible, like for example freely flying in and out of the body.
When you let go of fear, the truth will appear, so simple and clear.
And yet other absolutely amazing prophecies are those of Mother Shipton. Just listen what was published in a book 5 centuries ago. A carriage without horse will go. Around the world men's thoughts will fly, quick as the twinkling of an eye. Through towering hills proud men shall ride, no horse or ass move by his side. Beneath the water man shall walk, shall ride, shall sleep, and even talk. And in the air man shall be, in white and black and even green. In water, iron then shall float as easy as a wooden boat. Gold shall be seen in a stream and stone, in land that it is yet unknown. In those wondrous, far-off days, the women shall adopt a craze to dress like men and trousers wear, and to cut off all their locks of hair. They'll ride astride with brazen brow, as witches do on broomsticks now. And roaring monsters, with men atop, that seem to eat the verdant crop. And men shall fly, as birds do now, and give away the horse and plough. The love shall die and marriage cease, and nations wane as babies decrease. And wives shall fondle cats and dogs, and men live much the same as hogs. Wow, Mother Shipton doesn't seem to be highly impressed with the crown jewel of evolution, the hogs. An iron monster, trembling fear, eats parchment, words, and quill and ink, and mankind is given time to think. Well, she seems to be an excellent poet as well. Not everybody would be able to compose such a beautiful description of the printing press. Iron monster eating parchment, words, and quill and ink. A man is given time to think. The description of our present situation is not less accurate. And murder fall, and brutal deed, when man will only think of greed, and man shall walk as if asleep. Probably she refers to the hypnotic trance caused by the smart gadgets we use. As we saw in the earlier episodes, people walk into traffic and get injured or or fall off cliffs and kill themselves because they're hypnotized by their smartphones. And that is by thousands every year. The king shall false promise make and talk just for talking's sake, and nations plan horrific war, the like as never seen before. The taxes rise and lively down, and nations wear perpetual frown. Well, I can't think of better words to describe our politicians than this, and just talk for talking's sake. And then she continues with the things that are yet to come. These mighty tyrants will fail to do, they fail to split the world in two, but from their acts a danger bred, an illness, leaving many dead. When pictures seem alive, with movements free, when boats like fishes swim the sea, when men like birds shall scour the sky, then half the world, deep drenched in blood, shall die. 3 sleeping mountains gather breath, and spew out mud, ice, and death. An earthquake swallows town and town, in lands as yet to me unknown. For those who live the century through in fear and trembling this shall do, flee to the mountains and the dens, to bog and forest and wild fens. For storms will range and oceans roar when Gabriel stands on sea and shore, and as he blows his wondrous horn, all worlds die and new be born. A fiery dragon will cross the sky 6 times before the earth shall die. Mankind will tremble and frightened be for the 6 heralds in this prophecy. For 7 days and 7 nights man will watch this awesome sight. The tides will rise beyond their ken to bite away the shores, and then the mountains will begin to roar, and earthquakes split the plain to shore. And flooding waters rushing in will flood the lands with such a din that mankind cowers in muddy den and snarls about with his fellow men. He bares his teeth and fights and kills, and secret foods in secret hills, and ugly in his fear he lies to kill marauders, thieves, and spies. Well, this is such an amazingly accurate description of the current situation. Secret foods in secret hills, those are the bunkers. Many of them are getting built already. And then ugly in his fear, he lies to kill marauders, thieves, and spies. Yeah, that's what they are telling us, yeah, that they are killing marauders, thieves, and spies. And the Hollywood promotes that fairy tale that the military is about defending your country from the others. Actually, all these secret services have no intention to protect you. They're doing something completely different. It's nice to see, though, that at least some politicians dare to tell the truth. The truth that all these staged wars have nothing to do with defending the interest of the population of any country at all.
Довод НАТО таков. Ракетный щит возводится не против вас, а против Ирана.
Вы меня рассмешили. Дай вам Бог здоровья, потому что уже конец рабочего дня, так, в принципе, уже спать пора. Поеду домой с хорошим настроением.
As more and more people become aware of this, and they simply refuse to participate in the stupid war into which their politicians are trying to drag them, then this will come true. These mighty tyrants will fail to do. They fail to split the world in two. Then Shipton continues. Man flees in terror from the floods, and kills and rapes, and lies in blood, and spilling blood by mankind's hand will stain and bitter many lands. And when the dragon's tail is gone, man forgets and smiles and carries on, to apply himself too late, for man has earned deserved fate. His masked smile, his false grandeur, will serve the gods, their anger stir, and they will send the dragon back to light the sky. His tail will crack upon the earth and rend the earth, and man shall flee, king, lord, and serf. But slowly they are routed out to seek diminishing water spout, and when men will die of thirst before the oceans rise to mount to the shore, and lands will crack and rend anew, do you think it's strange? It will come true. And in some far-off distant land, some man, oh such a tiny band, will have to leave their solid mount and span the earth for those few to count. Those who survive this and then begin the human race again, but not on land already there, but on ocean beds, stark, dry, and bare. Not every soul on earth will die as dragon's tail goes sweeping by. Not every land on earth will sink, but this will wallow in stench and stink of rotting bodies, of beast and man, of vegetation crisped on land. But the land that rises from the sea will be dry and clean and soft and free of mankind's dirt, and therefore be the source of man's new dynasty. And those that live will ever fear the dragon's tail for many years. But time erases memory. You think it's strange? It will be. And before the race is built anew, a silver serpent comes to view, and spew out men of like unknown, to mingle with the earth now grown cold from its heat, and these men can enlighten the minds of future man, to intermingle and show them how to live and love, and thus endow the children with the second sight, a natural thing, so that they might grow graceful, humble, and when they do, the golden age will start anew. The dragon tail is but a sign for mankind's fall and man's decline, and before this prophecy is done, I shall be burned at the stake at one. My body is signed, and my soul is set free. You think I utter blasphemy? You are wrong. These things have come to me. This prophecy will come to be. So in this beautiful poetry of Mother Shipton, we see an excellent confirmation of the timeline, future timeline given by Slava Sevrukowa. First of all, terrible natural disasters. Shipton calls them dragon's tail passing by first time. And then people manifest unbelievable cruelty, fight each other. And then the second disaster comes that sweeps almost everybody. That is the second passage of the dragon's tail. Again, we see people actively working on developing their astral vision, astral abilities. And again, she gives us key element of the new age, the fact that people will concentrate on educating their children to grow up as kind and loving individuals. And we have one new element. We see other benevolent races from the universe coming to help us in learning how to use our psychic abilities. Many people ask, why don't the aliens just land in the midst of us and start educating us right now if they care so much about humanity? Well, they don't do it for the same reason for which gentlemen don't go to the quarters that are infested with criminals. The gentlemen definitely have a very important message that they can share with the bunch of criminals, but the problem is that those people are not ready to accept it. They will simply rob them, beat them up, and there will be no educational effect. Another interesting compilation of visions about the future are the Tarabich prophecies. Some people doubt their genuineness, but when I had a look at the actual research of such skeptics, it looked more like a smear campaign to me. But in any case, even those who doubt their validity, they themselves say that when they went to the village, there were some sort of old manuscripts. Well, in any case, following the links in the description, you can make yourself familiar with the prophecies that has already come true. And I'm gonna read you just few short quotes about the prophecies concerning the future and the current times. Men will build a box, and there will be some kind of device with pictures inside it, but they will not be able to communicate with the dead, even though this picture device will be very close to that world. With the help of this device, people will be able to see everything that is happening all over the world. People will drill wells deep into the earth and dig out gold, which will give them light, speed, and power. The earth will shed tears of sorrow, because there will be much more gold and light on its surface than its interior. The world will suffer because of these open wounds. Instead of working in the fields, people will dig everywhere, but the real power will be all around them. Only after many years will people remember this real power, and then they will realize how foolish it was to dig all those holes. This power will also be present within the people, but it will take them a long time to discover it and use it. These people will live for a long, long time, unable to know themselves. When they do, people will much regret that they had not discovered that knowledge earlier, because it was all so simple. They will believe that their illusion is the truth, although there will be no truth in their heads. People will start to hate clean air, divine freshness, and all divine beauty, and will be concealed in darkness. It will be impossible to tell men from women. Everybody will dress in the same way. A groom will take a bride, but nobody will know who is who. People will be lost and will become more and more senseless by the day. Men will be born not knowing who is their grandfather and great-grandfather. People will think that they know everything, but they will know nothing. The more people think that they know everything, the less they will love and care for each other. Hatred will be so great between them that they will care more for their different devices than for their relatives. People will trust in their devices more than in their closest neighbors. Those who read and write different books with numbers will think that they know the most. The learned men will live by their calculations, and they will do and live exactly as those numbers tell them. Among those learned men there will be good and evil. The evil ones will poison the air and the water, and will spread pestilence over the seas, rivers, and the earth. And suddenly people will start to die of various illnesses. The good and wise ones will see that all this effort and hard work are worthless, and that it leads to the destruction of the world. And instead of looking for wisdom and numbers, they will start to seek it in prayer. As they start to pray more, they will be closer to God's wisdom, but it will be too late, because the evil ones would have already ravaged the full earth, and men will start to die in great numbers. Those who escape will save themselves and their families, but not for long, because a great famine will appear. There will be plenty of food in the towns and villages, but it will be poisoned. Driven by hunger, many will eat from it and will die immediately. Those who wage the final war will have scientists who will invent different strange cannonballs. Burning people will be falling from the skies. Only one country at the end of the world, surrounded by great seas, as big as Europe. All will live in peace without any trouble. Not a single cannonball will explode on it or over it. The prophecies of Van Rensburg from South Africa are also extremely interesting, and they confirm the general sequence of events as given by Slava Sevrukowa and Vanga. Van Rensburg should be taken very seriously for sure, because a good number of his predictions have already come true with an amazing accuracy. He concentrates more on the details of military action during World War III. Again, Syria comes up. Again, we see Europe devastated by Middle Eastern occupants in a blink. Again, terrible floods on continental scale. For example, Japan gets almost completely submerged. That was coming up, by the way, in a few other prophecies. And he also does give a hint about the peaceful times that are about to come after the end of World War III. He says that at that moment, a fair government consisting of people of integrity will start governing South Africa. People who perform miracles and prophets are not only a thing of the past. They walk amongst us as well. Unfortunately, the majority of people have become disconnected from their human essence to such an extent that they don't see much point to be interested in these exceptional personalities. Constantly attending to the apps on their smartphones has a much bigger priority. Perfect example of such a living saint would be John of God from Brazil. He has treated for free over 1 million people already in his life, and many of them have reported miraculous cure, or at least considerable improvement of their condition. His miraculous style of cure has been studied by a big number of medical professionals, who also concluded that there are genuine cases of what a common man would call miracle. The type of surgeries that he performs are still very far beyond the horizon of the front-age medical science, so-called science nowadays. The penguin professors don't even have any suggestions of what kind of anesthetic is working on the patient. Under normal conditions, this patient should be screaming with pain and should be losing gallons of blood. So wouldn't it make sense that people like John of God who are able to perform such surgeries, he is not the only one by any means, there are hundreds of others who do it as well. So maybe this type of people who actually do it would be expected to know how is it happening, and probably they will be willing to share it with the world. After all, they obviously care for the world. They are treating people usually for free all their lives. Yes, that's right. They do know and they want to share it. And this is exactly why they are pressed by government institutions to shut up, keep silent, unless you don't want legal problems. Even John of God himself is forced by the circumstances to be very careful what exactly is he saying to avoid legal trouble. So those who know are silenced by devious methods. Those who need the knowledge are being distracted by gadgets. And what is the result? The zombification of the human race goes on as planned. Since my words were not so kind in terms of your favorite gadgets, please don't misunderstand me. There is nothing intrinsically wrong with them. They are fine as such. The only problem is that the digital trans phenomena has been weaponized by the parasites with the intention to twist the very belief system of the human race and transform it into a parasitic one. Once a person is demoralized, once he's zombified, then he can be easily convinced to participate in this sad, chaotic circus that is currently being performed on the theater stage called Planet Earth.
Isto é o poder de Deus. Isto é quem acredita naquele grande arquiteto do universo. Eu nunca curei ninguém. O que cura é Deus.
And another interesting prophecy written some 1,000 years ago by a Russian queen named Olga and written down on a silver plate with the alphabet used by the Scythians. Amongst other things, she mentions, "This nation will drink from the bitter cup of sorrow, and that will last 1,000 years. And there will be famine, war, and even worse, evil-mindedness. The fraud kings, like vicious dogs, will trouble their citizens, and in their madness they will even change the history. They will bring about the destruction of their own nations. There are also other historic prophecies that deserve our respect. They are not some sort of recent concoction of a journalist who is assuring us that the end of the world is coming because the Mayans said so, and he tells us that even without asking the living Mayan tribes. There are many genuine old prophecies that are a precious wisdom that has survived for us through the ages, and examples would be the prophecies of the Native Americans, the nations that are still alive, and those of the old Islamic books. They do not give a very precise timing in terms of years when the actual transition to the New Age will occur, but they do give a good description of the end times, and it seems we are living through them right now. This video is not intended to instigate fear, anxiety, or hatred towards anybody. Just the opposite. It is meant to help you see the things from the right perspective. Each individual soul has so many incarnations and gets born and dies so many times that from a higher perspective, getting reborn is as dramatic as putting on a new suit. Although the chain of apocalyptic events described earlier in this episode can certainly be changed if the people as a whole start working on changing their belief system immediately. But in reality, any major changes would be highly unlikely because it simply takes time to learn one's karmic lessons. Too many people are seriously confused and at the same time show little intention to start working on themselves in the near future. This video is actually meant to help you prepare for the upcoming events on a personal level. When very difficult times come, many of us will have to face extremely difficult practical decisions. It could be very confusing because you may end up cut off from any telecommunication systems without much idea of what's going on in the world anyway. Or you could end up in a situation where you are given only wrong information and you have no access to the alternative media that still exists nowadays. There could be minimal or no external help, so the only thing you could rely on will be the purity to connect to your deep spirit. That is why, as a main priority, my main advice for everybody is to start studying the books, the compilations of Dr. Brian Weiss and Michael Newton, because to me they seem to be the absolutely best source available nowadays of transcendental knowledge. These are not books written by these medical practitioners. They have simply compiled the wisdom that thousands of their patients have connected to in the state of hypnosis while being connected to their higher selves. Their books are actually a scripture that is much more holy than all the other traditional holy scriptures, because the traditional religious sacred books have reached us in a translated form. We don't read it in original, we don't read the actual words that the prophet heard from the given angel. Although the original wisdom as given by the angel or the holy person, the prophet, was absolutely true, what is reaching us through time is only a reflection of different translators and people who are re-narrating the old story, and we are limited only to their understanding and their idea of what the angel or prophet said originally. We don't understand neither the language nor the mentality to which the prophet spoke. But the books of Brian Weiss and Michael Newton are completely different. We don't have any language barrier, and the people who are telling us about the other worlds are familiar with our mentality. The concepts that are used in their language are absolutely familiar to us, and this makes a great difference. Actually, After studying these books, you will be able to understand the scriptures of your own old religion in a much better way. And exactly now is the time to strengthen your spirit, and not in a couple of decades when the earth is burning in the apocalyptic fires. That will be the time of your final exam, not the time when you should start thinking about learning. Parasites are not to be hated. They don't exist without the permission of whom most people consider to be God, as by definition nothing exists outside of him. The parasites are simply examiners for us. For example, let's take the biblical episode with the mark of the beast. If this really does become a reality in the timeline that we live in, then the mass media will present getting this mark as some sort of fashionable and progressive way for the society. Judging from the biblical description, the free, independent alternative media will be absolutely silenced at that time. So many people won't have anybody to even remind them, oh, this is the mark of the beast. Look what's happening. It's exactly like the biblical descriptions. This is devilish. Instead, it will look cool and fashionable in the beginning. Nothing bad will happen initially to the people who take it. Indeed, they may have financial benefits initially, and then life will start gradually becoming difficult for those who haven't taken the mark. Many people will take it just because otherwise their children will not have proper food, proper clothes, will be looked down upon by other children, and so on. The mass media will daily assure you that accepting the mark is something perfectly normal to do, and most likely many people will fall for it. They will accept the mark, although they have been clearly warned about this dangerous trap centuries ago. And the worst implication of accepting this mark in future wouldn't be the fact that one's chances to remain alive till the beginning of the new golden age will be less, if any. Far worse will be the fact that this piece of technology or black magic, or probably most correctly black magic technology, will have an influence on people's consciousness and will make them carry out unbelievable atrocities and cruelties which will have to be paid for in future lives. Whatever you do to others, it will come back to you. At school, students are required to memorize all kinds of information that may not even be of any use to them during their adult life. And yet, for some mysterious, weird reason, other scientific discoveries which happen to be extremely important are not even included in the curriculum. And namely, the ones pertaining to how to live a happy life. A very good number of scientific studies have proven again and again, beyond doubt, that people who are prone to feeling compassion, kindness, and friendliness most definitely experience far more happiness in their lives. While people who tend to hate, to be revengeful and spiteful, simply remain unhappy throughout their lives. So as a result of this, most people are even unaware about the most important thing in their lives, how to be happy. And then within a few generations, the mass media makes them even forget that being happy is the main thing. And then this natural desire to be happy is gradually replaced with the idea that the goal of life is to constantly strive to get more money. Well, after struggling for money all your life, there is no guarantee that you will get them. And if you do get them, this doesn't mean that they will make you happy. But one other thing is sure, that you have spent your entire life worshipping the idols of the mafia, of the criminal banksters, which, with the tools of a dishonest monetary system, sucks dry the blood of the majority of the inhabitants of this planet while they are still alive. Many of us have been ignoring this problem simply because the smell of these garbage piles where these people live doesn't reach our clean house, and we have a computer and a nice car, and we think, Well, it's not extremely honest. Yeah, the government are criminals, but I guess it should be all okay as long as I'm relatively fine. Well, it seems within the next few decades, many of us will have to taste our own bitter medicine, the one that we have been administering to the people on those garbage piles indirectly, by silently and passively supporting the financial and political system which was doing it for us remotely over there. The prophets who saw those times in their visions described them as times when the living will envy the dead. Well, maybe after we taste our own bitter medicine, then we'll realize simple truths like never team up with liars and criminals and never do to others what you don't wish to experience yourself.
There's a feeling inside, so deep and so wide, so open